Oh, hello there. I'm Bilchan.
I'm Nimakung.
I'm Banchan.
In this class, I'll read to all of you Chapter 9, Section 4 of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
As.
Ah.
The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Author Conan Doyle. Chapter 9, Section 4 was folded across it. It was a wonderfully silent house. There was an old clock ticking loudly somewhere in the passage, but otherwise everything was deadly still. A vague feeling of uneasiness began to steal over me. Who were these German people? And what were they doing living in this strange, out-of-the-way place? And where was the place? I was 10 miles or so from Iford. That was all I knew. But whether north, south, east, or west, I had no idea. For that matter, Reading, and possibly other large towns, were within that radius, so the place might not be so secluded. After all, yet it was quite certain, from the absolute stillness, that we were in the country. I paced up and down the room, was thoroughly earning my 50 guinea fee. Suddenly, without any preliminary sound in the midst of the utter stillness, the door of my room swung slowly open. The woman was standing in the aperture, the darkness of the hall behind her, the yellow light from my lamp beating upon her eager and beautiful face. I could see at a glance that she was sick with fear. The sight sent a chill to my own heart. She held up one shaking finger to warn me to be silent. She shot a few whispered words of broken English at me, her eyes glancing back, like those of a frightened horse, into the gloom behind her. I would go, said she, trying hard, as it seemed to me, to speak calmly. I would go. I should not stay here. But, Madame, said I have not yet done what I came for. It is not worth your while to wait, went on. You can pass through the door. No one hinders. And then, seeing that, I smiled and shook my head. She suddenly threw aside her constraint and made a step forward, with her hands wrung together. For the love of heaven, she whispered, but I am somewhat headstrong by nature. The way. I thought of my 50 guinea fee, of my wearisome journey, and of the unpleasant night which seemed to be before me. Was it all to go for nothing? Why should I slink away without having carried out my commission, and without the payment which was my due? This woman might, for all I knew, be a monomaniac, with a stout bearing. Therefore, though her manner had shaken me more than I cared to confess, I still shook my head and declared my intention of remaining where I was. She was about to renew her entreaties when a door slammed overhead, and the sound of several footsteps was heard on the stairs. She listened for an instant, threw up her hands with a despairing gesture, and vanished as suddenly and as noiselessly as she had come, growing out of the creases of his double chin. He was introduced to me as Mr. Ferguson. This is my secretary manager, said the colonel. By the way, I was under the impression that I left this door shut just now. On the contrary, said I. He shot one of his suspicious looks at me. Perhaps we had better proceed to business. Then said he, Mister, I had better put my hat on. What? No. What? Wow. This is only where we compress it. But never mind that. We went upstairs together. The Colonel first with the lamb. The fat manager and I behind him. It was a labyrinth of an old house, with corridors, passages, narrow winding staircases, and little luders, the thresholds of which were hollowed out by the generations who had crossed them. There were no carpets and no signs of any furniture above the ground floor, while the plaster was peeling off the walls, and the damp was breaking through and green, unhealthy blotches. I tried to put on as unconcerned an air as possible, but I had not forgotten the warnings of the lady, even though I disregarded them, and I kept a keen eye up on my two companions. Ferguson appeared to be a morose and silent man, a fellow countryman. Colonel Lysander Stark stopped at last before a low door, which he unlocked. Within was a small, square room, in which the three of us could hardly get at one time. Ferguson remained outside, and the Colonel ushered me in. We are now, said he, actually within the hydraulic press. It done. The ceiling of this small chamber is really the end of the descending piston, and it comes down with the force of many tons upon this metal floor. There are small lateral columns of water outside which receive the force, and which transmit and multiply in the manner which is familiar to you. The machine goes readily enough, but there is some stiffness in the working of it, and it has lost a little of its force. I took the lamp from him, and I examined the machine very thoroughly. It was indeed a gigantic one, and capable of exercising enormous pressure. When I passed outside, however, and pressed down the levers which controlled it, I knew at once by the whishing sound that there was a slight leakage, which led a regurgitation of water through one of the side cylinders. Worked. This was clearly the cause of the loss of power, and I pointed it out to my companions. Should proceed to set it right. When I had made it clear to them, it to satisfy my own curiosity. Fabrication. For so inadequate a purpose. The walls were of wood, but the floor consisted of a large iron trough. All over it, looking down at me. What are you doing there? He asked. He had told me. I was admiring your flow's earth, said I. The instant that I uttered the words I regretted the rashness of my speech. His face set hard, and a baleful light sprang up in his grey eyes. Very well, said he. To be continued.